big dog. What up, everybody? Welcome to a wonderful coffee hour. Here we are, Tuesday. We are in June 24th. Man, I tell you what, the days just click by. I mean, we're halfway through the year already, and it just seems like we just celebrated the new year. Okay, so again, don't let grass grow under your feet. If you have plans, if you had great intentions this year, if you had things you wanted to do to further your career, that you wanted to enrich your family, maybe you wanted to get closer with God, maybe something, it is time to do it right now. Don't wait. Okay, life is short. We have to do it. All right. Hey, everybody, thank you for joining me again here on Coffee Hour. As you saw, today we're going to talk about some changes that are going to take place to the 2026. I know for some of you are saying, wait, that's quite a ways away. But it is always interesting for me to look at these changes and to see maybe something that was basically clearing up some intent that we thought the code was supposed to say, and now it says it a little better, all those type of things. So again, I like to take some time and look at these things. Now, I understand is a little bit misleading in my title. Saying the top 10, because that is subjective, everybody's top 10. This is certainly not my top 10 types of items, but again, we have to do something to get people to the show, right? So we're going to talk about 10 or even more types of changes. Now, also remember that these changes are based on the second draft. So some of these that we talk about may be changed a little bit for the CAM, but if y'all watched my episode yesterday, the reality is that if the code panel put forth something in the second draft, even if it was reversed at the CAM, there's a high probability that when it goes back to the code making panel, they're going to revert it right back to their intended, whatever their second draft statement was. That's just how it works. Now, there are some occasions where minds may be changed if they came to the meeting. I'm going to be honest with you. I do not think, and I might be wrong, I do not think that this session that we just went to in Vegas was well attended. I could be wrong. They might say, oh, the numbers are great. It just didn't look like it to me. It just didn't look, I mean, it was all the usuals were there, all of us that go to these things, but it just didn't seem to me very, well attended. I don't know. But at the end of the day, that's just one man's opinion from being there, that type of thing. And again, I was in and out. So anyway, let's do some quick shout outs. As always, folks, let me know who you are, where you're from in the comments. I love living vicariously through you and your success and things you got going on. So make sure you do that. Again, if you're new to Coffee Hour, we don't just come here. So if you're a fast track student, you think that you're coming here in the morning and all I'm going to talk about is exam prep, that is not what Coffee Hour is all about. Coffee Hour is a chance for me to unwind, see you every morning, connect with you, ask questions, have a conversation, and kind of get your day started. Now, of course, do we talk code? Absolutely. But we do this Monday through Friday. So again, the topics can go all over the place. So if you came with a specific thought in mind, then that's not how Coffee Hour works. So just to let you know, okay? All right. So let's kind of go through the list here and say hi to folks. What's up, Paul? Glad to have you here. Hashtag win. Get in on that spin. What's up, Adam? Glad to have you here. Appreciate you. Marlon, thank you for joining us, Marlon. Appreciate you. Got all the code nerds riled up. Frank the Great, there you go. You got your wire waffle. Awesome. Let us know how it works for you if you put it to use. Appreciate it. Glad you got that in the mail. What's up, Cray Cray? Glad to have you in the house. All the way up in Nashville. Good morning, David. Glad to have you here, my friend. CMECP. David, I did send you out an email. Make sure you check your emails. And read that article that was sent to you and give me your thumbs up or thumbs down and any comments you might have. You see, you got your card in the mail. Excellent. Cool. Glad you got it. What's up, Manny? All the way from Wyoming. Now, of course, bear with me, folks. I think I got a cold. So I think flying on those airplanes with everybody hacking on the plane probably gave me a cold. So if I get to coughing, that's okay. Bear with me. As long as my coughing don't put me in a coffin, then I'm going to be okay. All right. What's up? Rob, what's up? Got your wallet this weekend and it looks amazing. Excellent. I'm glad you liked it, Rob. Let's see. Good morning, Jonathan. There you go. I told y'all, folks, the stuff will slowly be rolling out. Told y'all, I'm not going to let you down. Not going to let you down. We expect the jig to be here this week or next week for the Manny, for different folks, the Red Dog for the license plate thing. So we'll get with you when that comes. So make sure you reach out to us so we have your contact for that. What's up, Robert, from the great state of Florida? Welcome over on Facebook, watching on Facebook. That is awesome. Skyattle or Seattle, however you want to say it. Good morning. Glad to have you here. Let's see, everybody hitting the win. Red Dog, good morning.
Woo, 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 woo. Big dog.
Crypto's in the house. Good morning. All right, let's go and get into these things. Guys, as always, folks that come rolling in, just do me a favor. Put your name, where you're from, what you got going on. If you're a fast track student, whatnot, throw it in there. Okay. So, yeah, let's see. Arlen said he had an awful connection yesterday. Didn't get your response to my question. Have you wired Ansel hoods? No, I have not. I know that's typically outside of the scope of what I would do. I'm an electrician. So typically that involved fire alarms and suppression and all that kind of stuff. And we might have brought power to a box. But other than that, I never got involved in that. That's typically outside of the scope of what I did as an electrician. I was more for the fire alarm folks or those that got into that. I didn't get into that type of stuff. Okay, David got it. Intriguing article. Yep, that's from our CMECP candidate, Tom. That was his article. Let's see here. Good morning, Stephen or Stephen. Is that Stephen? Stephen. Good morning. Glad to have you here. Let's see here. Usul fell off the electrical wagon for several days. Lady friend problems, drama, but there you go. We all have them, right? The easiest way to solve that is just get married and then the problems become both your problems and that way you work them out together, right? Or you get one of those ultimate coins and you just use it and flip it for every decision you have to make, okay? Let's see. All right. Edward, got your knife in the mini wallet. Sweet. As I told you, folks, things are rolling out. People are getting their stuff. Congratulations. I'm glad you got that. There you go. Thomas in the house. Okay. Aloha from, what is it? NHL. Oh, Honolulu. Ooh. Out there in Hawaii area, out there on the islands. Okay. Good morning, Adrian. All right. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to talk about some of the top changes that you can expect and allow you to ask questions about them. And we're going to show you those. And we're going to be looking at the second draft report, which is, again, everything that we did at the NITMAMS, if the code panel put forth something on a second draft and it got reversed at the NITMAMS through a CAM, a CAM, a certified amending motion, there is a high probability that when it goes back to the code panel, they're going to be set in their ways, and it's very rare for them to flip-flop. But again, people could, flip-flop. They could go the other way. So that's the whole point of the meeting, is to give people the body to have a chance to argue and sway somebody. And when it goes back to the code panel, they may change their mind. I can tell you from my experience, most code-making bodies, when something comes back, they go with what they went with the first time, and they don't want to change. I'm just saying, okay? I'm just saying. All right, so let's talk about some changes that are going to take place, and we'll go look at some stuff first. Okay, number one, biggest change that I think is the start of the restructuring. Okay, so here's the first thing. Edgar, got your package too. Marlon, got your package. Cool. United States Postal Service, there you go. So one of the biggest changes, I think, is we're getting ready for a restructuring. And the 2026 is going to be moving things around to kind of set you up, kind of like dip your toe in the water and get you used to some things that move around. The technical part's not going to change. It's just kind of the movement. And so some new articles are coming in the 2026. Things are kind of moving around a little bit to set it up for this really bigger change that's coming in 2029. I don't know. I may be retired by then from doing it, but obviously I'm going to be writing articles on it. So, and if I am retired by chance from my day jobs and not so much the academy, then it's probably be more opinionated, even though you might think I can't get any more opinionated than I am. They might be more opinionated. And obviously I will do a lot more blogs because I love doing the blogs. Okay. So check it out. And by the way, full disclaimer, when I'm writing blogs, I'm also using TradeHog because I use it to minimize the amount of work. So writing stuff from scratch anymore, if it's about code, I do utilize TradeHog. I tell people all the time, they say AI, do you use AI? Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts in my head, but a lot of times if I'm going to be working smarter, not harder, AI, like with TradeHog, by the way, which is the sponsor of this, and we also released 3 new plans over on TradeHog, by the way. We just released the annual plans. So those individuals that have the TradeHog coming, that would be Terrence and Red Dog. I will get with you and set you up so you can get your annual basic TradeHog. And then Joey Fontanes, you got the premium version annual, okay? So these are, we've got it all set up now and everything works. So again, that was done over the weekend while I was playing around out in Vegas. Jeff got all that worked out. So good news. So for those that don't like the annual, the monthly thing that comes out, don't worry. The TradeHog now is going to, we have an annual option and you just pay one time and you don't have to worry about it again, that type of thing. So got that all squared away. All right, so that's out of business. Now, first change is the moving of Article 220 to 120, okay? Significant change, I think. So if we look at the NEC, if we look here, you're gonna see, and let me shut this down real quick, right here. Okay, so you see right here? So this is 220. So 220 is now where you're going to get all of your load calculations, okay? And so it's going to have everything here is normal. If I open this up, you can see there is going to be the part 1, which is general, right? All that all the way down. You got all your load calculations in here. There's part 3, still feeder and service load calculations. You're still going to have everything else as normal. There's part 2 for branch circuits. So really what is taking place here is it's basically just moving everything from 220 over into 120 and then taking things and trying to align them so it makes a little more sense. So some things were added. For example, 120.13 will be added in order to clarify the minimum number of branch circuits that you're required to have. Now that's, again, not going to take the place also of the small appliance branch circuit requirement. That stays a certain number, minimum of 2, and the laundry. But we are going to get direction to clarify the minimum number of general use branch circuits, okay? And right now it's all over the place. It's at 4 VA per square foot, but what was submitted by the panel at the second draft, that was 3 VA per square foot, and we can go look at that. And I think, be honest with you, what I think right here, you can see it's 3 right now in the second draft. That's what the code panel wanted, by the way. So I think that, even though 4 VA per square foot got voted on at the CAMs, when it goes back to the code making panel, they're saying, look, we intended for it to be 3. I think everybody's going to vote the same way they voted before. So it's going to end up being 3. So there you go. So that's the first change to be aware of. Is all the calculations that you're familiar with in 220 are going to be moving to 120. Okay. All right. So that type of thing. So definitely a significant change because if you're used to digging in 220, as far as the technical part, it's not going to change. So don't freak out. It's not going to change. Okay. Let's see. What does Frank says? He says he hates when they move articles to different sections and pages, 23, yeah, but I mean, it's okay. I mean, really, we don't memorize the NEC anyway, to be honest with you. I mean, we really don't. We just go to the code book. So the whole concept is, their concept is moving it around is going to make it flow a little better. So go up into chapter 1. You're going to get all the calculations, general. definitions, all that kind of stuff. And then we can save all of the other stuff and just moves it around. So, you know, I looked at it at first when it first came out, the proposed changes. And I was like, wow, it was going to be dramatic. But then after I got looking at it, I'm like, no, it makes sense. So again, this is just easy to remember. 220 just becomes 120. That's an easy one, okay? All right, let's see. The next thing that changed. Well, this may or may not be significant for some people, but we have a change in Article 110.16, and that has to do with the mandatory arc flash labeling. One of the big changes here is it's now going to require you to do a date of the actual assessment, okay? So that's what it's going to be. So let's see what it looks like currently in the NEC. So let's go here. So this is the 2023 edition, by the way, to show you what it looks like. So this is where we're going to get a change. So here is 110, right here, 110.16 arc flash. Okay, so we see all these requirements, service and feeder. You see that it did quite an expansion in the 2023 for this labeling requirement, right? So at this point, we want to see, well, what's the change proposed for the 2026? Okay, yep. Yeah, actually, Thomas, that's a good way to do it. It also forces you to get back into the NEC and see where things have changed. So it allows you to stay sharp and, you know, and learn. And again, I want to learn something new every day. So moving it around is perfectly okay because I like things to be moved around. And, you know, I'm just thinking of it positively and that it's going to ultimately the right move to do this. All right, so let's see here. Let me go on and get in. So the next one is 110.16. So let's show you what this is going to look like for you that deal in commercial. So this isn't obviously not going to apply to dwelling units, obviously. But here they added this language in here. And I know it's hard for you guys to see it. I don't know if I can blow it up and make it any easier. Right here, they added this element that says that the other than dwelling units, a permanent arc flash marking shall be field or factory applied. And here's what they added. It says, and motor control centers that are likely to require examination, adjustment, servicing, or maintenance while energized. Okay, so it seems to narrow it down now that requires this permanent arc flash markings on all of this equipment, switchgear, enclosed panel boards, switchboards, industrial control panels, meter socket enclosures, motor controls, all of them that are likely to require examination, adjustment, servicing, or maintenance while energized. Well, I think most all of those things, somebody's going to either do some diagnostic testing or whatnot. So it basically just added this extra language in there for those locations. But it does bring up whether or not something has to be, all these things have to be done while energized. So that may bring up another argument about, do I require an arc flash hazard marking if I can determine that a piece of equipment does not require examination, adjustment, servicing, or maintenance? But I think personally, all those items that you see there probably do meet the list of where it would require that type of adjustment or servicing or maintenance while it's potentially energized. I think it would. Now, the big change for this one right here is that in the, let's see here. And again, the language was still there, by the way. It's just moved around a little bit. Now, the reason I'll point that out is because if you go back and look at this 2023, it's right here. Clearly visible to qualified persons for examination, adjustment, servicing, maintenance of the equipment. So it's not new, right? It just got moved out of an A and got moved up into the general statement of 110.16. So that's not new part of it, right? That's not the new element of it. Okay, but instead of having an A and a B, okay, instead of having an A and a B, what's happened is just now just one broad statement, okay? So that's what's kind of taken place. And you'll notice down here when it says the labeling, so this is 2023, by the way, we're looking at the screen. It says the arc flash label shall be in accordance with applicable industry practices and include the date the label was applied, okay? Well, that type of thing, the reason it changes is to here, it says the date that the label assessment was completed, okay? That's a big difference because you could have a label that was applied way earlier than when it actually assessment was done. And of course, at the time that it was installed, it could be different. So they want the most recent assessment that was completed. So this again is something that you have to put all this information on there. And when there is an assessment that was done, that is when the date is to be applied. Okay. So that's just a change and assumes that an assessment was done, a hazard assessment in NFPA 70E, all that type of stuff. When you get that type of thing done, now that's when you're going to mark that actual label, that type of thing. So probably going to stop, for this case, a lot of manufacturers for putting stuff on it prematurely, that this is something you probably are going to have to do in the field because, again, an assessment of the environment has to take place. And if it does, that date of when that assessment was actually completed will now have to be put on that label. Makes sense? Makes sense to me. I want the most current, relevant information on all the places that I'm required to have an arc flash hazard warning label. Okay, that's just me. All right. All right, what next? Okay, so that's again, we're not talking about earth-shattering changes here, but it is going to impact the installer because the installer now is not going to just take a label that may be applied arbitrarily to one condition because a piece of equipment could be used somewhere else and moved, and the actual arc flash boundary has changed. The incident energy or PPE level may have changed. And so now, if you do, we have to have the date of the assessment applied. It just makes sense to me. All right. So the next one we'll look at is one that is obviously has been controversial for people. The only reason I'm going to talk about this one is because it does clarify people's confusion when it comes to the receptacles at an island or peninsular location. Okay, so y'all all remember that the 2020, 2023 progression was to, and basically in the 2023, the progression was to remove any receptacles below the countertop that serve the island, right? You still had to had to be able to have the ability to get the circuit there. It's going to be a small appliance brand circuit, by the way. Be there. The receptacles can be on or above the countertop, but they don't want it on the side. And again, we read all the reports of people, kids, babies, child, whatever, pulling stuff off, grandmothers, grandpas, whatever, clumsy people, whatever it is, pulling stuff off the counter and spilling it on themselves. Whether I believe it was overreach or exaggeration or not, it's irrelevant what I think. It is what it is. Okay, I can have an opinion, but my opinion doesn't matter. I did submit a public input to correct this and restore it back below the countertop, but the code panel just absolutely doesn't want it. Okay, well, so you're not going to have it, but you still have to have power there, ability to get the circuit there. Okay, whether you put a junction box or you put a raceway or it's an unfinished basement, you can come up from the bottom. Many ways to achieve this. Now, one of the things that was clarified in the 2020, or will be clarified in the 2026, is that you can have receptacles that serve the other spacing requirements. Let's say it was a countertop, but maybe it was a permanent wall, and you have a receptacle that's got to meet the wall spacing requirements in 210.52a. It's just that receptacle that is on that wall, or maybe a wall that the counter butts up against too, so you get a backsplash, or whatever it is, whatever the issue is, those receptacles just cannot be closer than 24 inches from the surface, okay? Just can't be more than 20, can't be closer than 24 inches from the surface. Also, they made it very clear that even if you have a wall and it butts up next to, let's say, a peninsula, that the receptacle on the wall for the wall spacing requirement, you have to make sure that it is not within 24 inches of the countertop. So it's going to impact your wall spacing. Remember, in a kitchen, for example, you have wall space requirements and then you have countertop space requirements, okay? So at the end of the day, the wall spacing requirement, it has to make sure that that receptacle is not within 24 inches of the countertop, that type of thing. All right. So that was what the change is. So let's kind of go look. We'll go look at it. Let's see here. Let's go look at the lesson real quick. And we'll go look at it, show you what it looks like. So this is what it's going to be. Bear with me, because again, I got to scroll through all this stuff. Our 210.52. And let's get down here, right here. Now we'll get us down to where we need to be. Okay. All right, so here is where we're at. And let's get to, here we go. So here we are, islands in peninsular countertop work surfaces. Okay. So here's where you're coming down and you're going to see, okay, let's hide legislation so we can just see the code language. Okay, so receptacle outlets shall be located in one or more of the following locations: on or above, but not more than 20 inches. No change. The countertop using receptacle outlet assemblies listed for use in countertops. Those are kind that go into the countertop that either flip up or pop up or whatnot. And they are not the ones with the cord and plug, plug cap on the end of it that plug in a receptacle under the counter. These are hardwired, by the way. And they are listed assemblies for this application, okay? And then, of course, the third allowance is in work surfaces using receptacle outlet assemblies listed for use in the work surfaces or listed for use in the countertop. So if you get a countertop or a work surface in a kitchen and the receptacles are literally built into it as part of the work surface or that you get, and they're listed for use in that countertop, means it comes that way, then that's not a problem either. They're fine. You can leave them. But again, they're not going to be below anything. They're usually going to be built into it, either in the face or in the top or pop up or flip up or built into it, that type of thing. Again, no face up receptacles. But if it comes in the equipment or it comes that way, it's okay. We're okay. Now, with that said, it gets down here to the receptacle outlet location prohibited, or what's locations prohibited. Notice it says receptacles and see all this underlined and marked out stuff? Okay, I will hide this legislation. You can see the pure language here. It says receptacles, receptacle outlet locations prohibited. It says required and permitted receptacle outlets installed in the locations that is accessible outside the cabinet or wall surfaces that are below. So you have some receptacles, maybe it's for wall spacing, things like that, or serving an area. Maybe you have cabinets are not wall spaces, they're just cabinets. But if you create, let's say, a wall and you push cabinets against it, you could have a peninsula that does that, or you could have an island that pushes against a wall. And so at that point, it might be wall space in a kitchen. And if it's 2 feet or more, it requires a receptacle. Okay, so those are the difference between permitted and required type of scenarios, right? So at the end of the day, required and permitted receptacle outlets installed in a location that is accessible outside of the cabinet or wall surfaces that are below the countertop and work surfaces shall comply with the following. So where you may have a receptacle that is down low to meet the wall space requirement, okay, that's okay. The code is saying now this is okay. And again, didn't really say that in the 2023. It just kind of was a prohibiting statement. But now it's saying, okay, look, number one, receptacle outlets shall not be installed on adjacent walls extending from the base cabinet within 24 inches. So if I have a peninsula and a peninsula is coming out from the wall, because y'all know how a peninsula works, right? You have the wall and you're perpendicular, you have a peninsula coming out. Well, if I have a receptacle in the wall that's continuing, let's say in the living room, that receptacle on the wall space, maybe down low at 18 inches or 16 inches, that cannot be within 24 inches of the base of the cabinet. Okay, so that's the first thing. Can't be there. Next, it says the receptacle outlets beneath the countertop shall not be located within 24 inches of the countertop or work surface. Okay, so any of them that I install below or beneath the countertop, it's not saying I can't do it. It's saying that if I do that, it can't be. Okay, it shall not be located within 24 inches of the countertop or work surface. Okay, so if you put it down low, it's fine, because the concept here is that you're putting it down too low. The typical cord on an appliance is 24 inches. That's the ones that people are pulling off the counter, right? So if you put it down low, then those cords can't reach it. So that's the concept. Now, and there is an exception. I'll look at the exception real quick because that's important. But let me just be a devil's advocate here. The whole reason we got here is because we wanted more receptacles on the island, is because people were using those little extension cords, okay? They were doing it, and then people were pulling stuff off the counter, or there wasn't enough receptacles on the islands and peninsulas. So that's how we ended up getting more receptacles. That's what everybody wanted. But now we've gone the other way, and we don't want any on the island or peninsula, okay? Unless they're above it or built into it and pop up. Now, the problem is, even if you do put a receptacle down low, there is no black program anymore. We don't have fast track blacks, and we don't have fast track pluses anymore. All we have is the basic and the enhanced. We only do 2020 and 2023 NEC. We don't do 2017 anymore. We don't have any black or plus programs. They're all basic and enhanced. Okay, so now what it's saying is, if I have a receptacle that's down low to meet a wall space requirement, but somebody's having a party, right? And they're doing a party in the kitchen, and they're going to have cooking, cooktops, crock pots and stuff like that. We're back to square one, where they're probably going to grab these little extension cords, because again, putting it on the island lets everybody come up and get their food. It's a perfect place to do it. To me, I think we created just as bad of a problem. There was documented reasons why we added more receptacles. Now we took the receptacle away. So I don't know that this solves anything, to be honest with you. I can promise you, though, they won't keep data on this change in order to say, oh, crap, we made a mistake. Promising nobody ever likes to go back and say, oops, especially if you're on a copan or something like that. I'm just saying. It's my personal opinion. So anyway, so let's look at now. So you're saying, well, is there any exceptions to this? Can I have anything? Okay. Well, if we go back and look at the language here, we have an exception, right? And this exception says receptacle outlets installed in a drawer shall be permitted to be installed below countertops and work surfaces. Now, y'all have heard me be pretty facetious about this. Their concept is they're talking about receptacles that are actually installed in the drawer of, kind of like built-ins inside of it, built into the drawer. I think it's really poor language, and nobody submitted this. I didn't submit an ITMAM for it. I think it's poor language, because I think that if you want, now again, makes no sense, because somebody's not going to give up an entire drawer. Okay, it is something we used to do in the past. If you had one of these really fancy islands and there was nowhere to put anything, well, they would put a little drawer on there in the middle and sacrifice a little gap in the middle to put a receptacle on it. That way it didn't take up other space. So it was a little gap between two major cabinets. But at the end of the day, the exception says receptacle outlets installed in a drawer shall be permitted to be installed below the countertops and work surfaces. Okay. I think personally, in order to get what somebody wants, and what I don't like is argumentative type of changes. I think there are people that are going to argue that this means that I can put it in the drawer, in the face of the drawer, below the countertop. But now we have no rules about how low it can be, overhangs, none of that. Now, obviously, you're probably not going to have a drawer under an overhang. I mean, it's common sense, right? So it's usually going to be on the part where you're working at the cabinet. But I think that to get somebody that wants a receptacle on the side could argue this, but you'd have to sacrifice a drawer. And I don't think that anybody's going to do that. And the only reason this is here is because this is not just for cabinets or islands or peninsulas and all this that's in the kitchen. This is also drawers and workspaces. So you could have a countertop workspace in your kitchen, let's say, and it's where you sit down and write your bills or do your bills. I had one in McKinney, a little area. I never used it because I didn't pay my bills. No, I paid my bills. So they can build receptacles into the drawer itself, inside the cabinet, inside, and maybe it has one of the little drawers where the laptop goes in and slides out, and they can put some receptacles back in there. This is probably what the intent was, but the way it reads, I can see somebody challenging this. And so probably going to, but people are going to say, well, it says installed in a drawer. I think it should say receptacle outlets installed inside of a drawer might be more of what they intended, because I can see people arguing this one and saying, no, it says installed in a drawer. So if I'm going to take a drawer and I'm going to make sure it doesn't move, okay, important, because I'm going to run cables up through it. I don't want it to move back and forth. They got to be secured. So I can see somebody putting a receptacle in the face of a drawer. I can see people designing cabinets, custom cabinets that build a little drawer in the middle that is just designed just big enough for a little storage to drop stuff in there, but they're not going to do that. They're going to seal it, okay, and they're going to put a little receptacle in it in order to get one below the counter, okay? And the reason I say this is because this originally was submitted by the home builders, and then they backtracked on it, but the code panel ran with it, and I think that they're like, oops, we made a mistake. We really need some provision to get a receptacle down below the countertop, rather than have to drill and core out the granite, or that's just my opinion. But again, you can see how some people are going to spin this. Okay. You can say, Paul, you're full of crap. That's never going to happen. No, when something says installed in a drawer, doesn't necessarily it means inside the drawer. I can interpret it as in the face of the drawer. Anyway, that's just me. Okay. So that's the change that you're going to see. And I'll show you legislative. See all this marked out, all this kind of legislative text that it all gets marked out and that type of stuff. So again, you can kind of see how that's going to look. Oh, you can't see it. Sorry about that. So here's all that legislative text I showed you, all this marking out of everything, trying to simplify it, right? So there you go. All right. All right. So that's that change. Okay. Now let's see here. The next one is probably one that we talked about yesterday. This is the 210.8F requirement. So the listed HVAC equipment had this exception that went up to September 1st, 2026. It was the code panel wanted to keep it at 2026. The NITMAM wanted to move it to September 1st, 2029. The manufacturer said there's a problem. They know there's a problem with the GFCIs and being able to do this. The GFCI manufacturers said no, that we have what's called a special purpose. It'll work fine. It's a 20 milliamp. You can't exceed that. And so it won't have that high trip frequencies, especially during the compressor startup. They said, we got this, right? That type of thing. So, but the code panel said, no, it's, the CAM, they said, nope, we're going to leave it at the 2026. Now, I'm pretty sure that that's where it's going to stay, because then it goes back to the code panel. The code panel's intent was it for it to be September 1st, 2026. May or may not be an issue, right? Because I don't know, UL 943 isn't really complete yet, but the manufacturers said they got this, that they got those SP GFCIs, and basically just an increased milliamp range to handle that inrush. And they still say that it'll protect people, even though we know that it only takes 1/10 of an amp to kill you. This is what they say. So at the end of the day, we'll have to see. But the way it looks right now, the exception for HVAC is going away. And it's going to have GFCI protection on all of those outlets. Remember, we're not talking just receptacles. That's covered in 210.8A for dwellings and B for other than dwellings. We're talking about the outlet, the point where you take power from the system for utilization equipment. That one, where they had an exception for GFCI. It looks like that exception will go away, and it's going to require GFCI protection. If the manufacturers aren't ready, we're going to have problems again. So hopefully the manufacturers get ready. Okay. All right. Okay, let's look at another. So another change that took place has to do with those 10 amp branch circuits. So one of the things, in order to make sure that we don't put this, that's the one problem I have with a 10 amp branch circuit. Y'all heard us talk about it. When you introduce a 10 amp branch circuit in smaller conductors, which will probably make it into the NEC this time, you can only put certain loads on those 10 amp branch circuits. And it was intended for lighting type of loads. You can't put receptacles on those 10 amp branch circuits. However, none of the non-metallic sheath cable is color-coded to signify this is a 10 amp branch circuit. It's going to be a bit confusing. And the electrician that grabs a cable that's only good for 10 amps and installs it and accidentally installs it on a receptacle circuit, and nobody catches it, and then it gets sheetrocked, that's going to be a big problem. Okay, because we don't have any color coding system for non-metallic sheet cable. We have nothing that signifies this. So again, I see it ripe for possible issues. I have nothing against the conductors anymore. I don't care anymore. I have no play in what's used, copper, copper-clad aluminum. I don't give a squat. The point is, I think we're going to have some confusion unless we come up with some type of actual color coding requirements for these different sizes of non-metallic sheet cable, that type of thing. So I think that could be a problem. Now, let's go look at so one of the changes to go in line with this to make sure that we don't put certain loads on those 10 amp branch circuits is in the 2026 edition of the NEC. The allowance for the 10 amp branch circuit for the gas fireplaces is now prohibited. Okay, so everybody just got used to that. Okay, and then they're like, whoa, in the code. So let's go look real quick at what the NEC says currently for the 2023 edition. So I'm going to look at 210. Okay, and many people that are doing these gas fireplaces and igniter circuits and all this stuff like that, right? If you go look at 210.23, let's go look at it right here. And I'll just get this down. So here is those 10 amp circuits, okay? And it says the load permitted for a 10 amp circuit, okay? It lets you do lighting outlets. Again, we have LEDs now, so we're not worried. We can calculate our loads. We know how to do that. Just take the rating of whatever the luminaire is, okay? You can limit that. But here it is dwelling unit exhaust fans on bathrooms and laundry room lighting circuits. No big deal. Limited loads. But here it says gas fireplaces unit supplied by an individual branch circuit. Now, here's the problem with those. The reason they're going to get rid of this, okay, is because typically these are cord and plug. And so you have a prohibitive requirement for these 10 amp branch circuits, right? And the prohibitive requirement, even in the 2023 code, is right here. You can't supply receptacle outlets, okay? Okay. There's a couple things that you can't supply, obviously, with the 10 amp branch circuit. But this typically comes from the manufacturers, and it might have a connected cord plug. Well, that would mean that there has to be some type of receptacle application to that, right? So this was removed. So in the 2023 edition, the 2026 edition of the NEC, that is not going to be in there anymore. Okay, so I'll take you here. Here's your 10 amp branch circuit. So here, right here, you see right here that it's gone. Item number 3 is gone. So you no longer can do gas fireplaces units supplied by an individual branch circuit. Can't do it anymore. All right. Also, I'll mention that if you do get access to TerraView, for example, if you get a free account, you go on to get access. Up here, you can always see the public comments right here. So here's the public comment. I'll just click on it. See this right here? They wanted to add receptacles that exclusively supply class 2. So they wanted to allow some receptacles, even though it prohibited to be any receptacles on a 10 amp branch circuit, right? And they went on down here and clarified. Okay, so made it clear. Okay. All right, so that's who submitted that. And again, although the proposal has merit, the proposed language can have unintended consequences. Okay, 10 amp branch circuits are only allowed to supply lighting outlets and exhaust fans. That is the intent of a 10 amp branch circuit. I'm an electrician, and let me just throw this out there. Some people are going to like this and not going to like this. There is no way I would ever run a 10 amp branch circuit for lighting. There is no way I'd ever run a 10 amp branch circuit for an exhaust fan. Why would I do that? I'm going to run a 15 amp branch circuit. I'm going to hit the exhaust fan. I'm going to run that. I'm going to run a 15 amp branch circuit. I'm going to do my lighting. I can get more lights on it. Why would I want to have to go with something specialized to have a 10 amp branch circuit? It would never do it. So for all intents and purposes, it's great, but it's not practical. As an electrician, I just would never do it, a 10 amp branch circuit. So I would not ever run a 16 gauge copper to anything. It's just pointless for me to do that. Okay. Anyway, so that is a change. Just to let you know that gas fire, and again, this was jumped on. My brother even called me about a question that had to do with the circuit for a gas fireplace, okay, for the blower and everything like that. So not going to be on those 10 amp brand circuits. So good. Now, the next one is the significant change. I know we got some comments in here. I'll see here. Let's see. Adam got his wire waffle, and his coin and his VD card. You are most welcome, sir. I'm glad to see everybody's getting their stuff. Let's see here. David says, when are they going to fix the standard to require ground and neutral conductors to the AC units so they have a legitimate return path for the control circuit? Thing to remember, really, David, is with the GFCI protection, you don't need, if it's pure 240, it can measure the difference, except for in the panel where the GFCI, as long as you take the pigtail over to the neutral bus, you really, in most of them, you got to check which device you're using, but most of those GFCIs don't need a neutral for that. You still got to have your equipment ground. You got to have that anyway, but they don't have a need for the neutral, so you wouldn't have to run a neutral in that pure 240 volt circuit. It can measure the imbalance or leakage current on the frame through the equipment ground. They will function fine without a neutral because they didn't need a neutral. But there's other issues that they're running into upstream of these things that are affecting the high frequencies and all this. And so, again, the milliamp, that's why let's face it. We know that those HVAC units are tripping because of that 5 milliamp in the inrush. So their solution is, let's just bump it up to don't exceed a 20 milliamp. The problem with that is we've educated everybody that the personnel protection is Class A. 20 milliamps falls more, even though it's called special purpose, it falls more to me into the Class B range. Now, granted, we say it's not going to exceed 20 milliamps and yada, yada, yada. The argument is that going to actually provide personnel protection? If it is, then why aren't we allowed to use Class B other than, snow melting applications? How come we're not allowed to use a higher milliamp for those personal protection areas? So that is the argument, and I think UL 493 are not done yet. And I think that it could be a problem come September 1st, 2026, when people are going to have to start using the GFCIs. Now, they did give an option for a Class C GFCI, SP, special purpose, but again, that's a higher milliamp threshold. Is it really providing the personnel protection? Manufacturers, obviously they pushed for it, so they're the ones that are going to have to answer to that. Also, let's remember how we got here. The 210.8F requirement out there was a result of somebody reaching over an HVAC unit and getting electrocuted. Kind of where it all started. What we all forget is that the HVAC unit wasn't grounded properly in the first place. So when somebody gets hurt, a lot of times we jump on this bandwagon. And we don't want anybody to get hurt, but we jump on this bandwagon. Same with the lighting outlets, 120 volt lighting outlets in a crawl space have to be GFCI protected. Well, that's a result of somebody getting killed underneath the crawl space on a lamp that bust. Okay, I get it. I don't want anybody to get hurt, but it's just like the countertop issues in a kitchen. We can't fix everything. We have to use a little more common sense. If the lamp in the crawl space looks like it's in a location where it could be damaged, it's too low, it doesn't have a guard on it, let's change the rules to require guards or some type of protection or limit it only to LEDs or something in the crawl. That's a better way to go than to immediately just throw GFCI at everything. That's just my opinion. Again, what the hell do I know? I'm just telling you, I think that sometimes when somebody gets hurt, and I hate it when somebody gets hurt, but we react. And I can promise you this, if somebody gets hurt and there's a solution by the manufacturers, don't get me wrong, I work for a manufacturer, but I'm saying they are lining up at the door to sell you some more GFCIs and AFCIs. Just my opinion. I am a supporter of AFCIs. I believe GFCIs work, but I am a firm believer that you've got the people waiting for issues to be able to go to the code panel and try to expand the use of GFCIs and AFCIs, okay? Just like the expansion of AFCI for bathroom lighting outlets. Didn't do anything about the bathroom branch circuit for the receptacle, but jumped all over the lighting outlets in a bathroom and require AFCI protection. And you might say, is that going to make it into the code? Probably not, because it got passed at the CAM, but when it goes back to the code panel, they did not push forward to have the bathroom lighting outlets. They did not push forward the attic requirement. That was done on a CAM. And so if it goes back to the code making panel, they're probably going to revert back and they're not going to get in the code. And I hope personally that's what happens. Even though somebody came and said, oh, the attic one was a result of a fire. Dude, if we created code for the result of every damn fire that people speculate, because you know as well as I do, any house fire, the first thing they think of, it's electrical. The first thing they think of. You get what I'm saying? So I just don't like the knee-jerk reaction, and I don't like when manufacturers jump on that. I'm just saying. Okay. All right, so the next significant change is going to be to Article 525. Article 525 got an entire rewrite. So if you're somebody that's used to doing carnivals, fairgrounds, circuses, and all that kind of stuff, it has been rewritten for clarity. Okay, so they're not clowning around. I did not have my sound effects ready, right? So anyway, they redone 525. Okay, so if we go back and we look at it, just so we can get a kind of a visual of this, I will get us down. Let's go here to 525 and see what it kind of looked like. You should see a lot of gray if we do this right. So let's go to 525 right here, and let's see what we got. So all of these looks like things are, let's see, moved around. There you go. Multiple sources of supply. Let's see here. All of these are gray, so that tells me numbering all changed. So it's not very big, so that's good news. And I don't think any technical structure is changing for those that do carnivals, circuses, and all that kind of stuff. I think it's just removing things around and restructuring it. And we can verify that by going and looking at the 2023 and look and see what it looks like. And let's see. Here's the. Okay, so let's go down. Okay, yeah. All right, so there was a 525.2 added. That's a listing requirement for egress luminaires have to be listed. So that was added. Let's see. I'm just trying to give you a synopsis of change. Let's see here. No. My initial thing looks like, well, there's a renumbering. So 525.11 became 525.12. That's not a big deal. Let's see here. Other than that, I think it's just a move. It's just kind of just a, let's see, 525.21 is rides, tents, and concessions. But in the 2026, it's going to be called disconnecting means. And then it's going to talk about moving rides and attractions. So I think here, rather than the complexity of just calling it disconnecting means and having all this kind of throw up on the screen, they're going to actually break it down into more of a step process. Like here it is, 525.21 disconnecting means, and now you see there's an A, there's a B, there's a, so I think now it's dealing with moving and non-moving attractions. So for disconnecting means. So I think it's just a little more logical flow. So that's not a big change, but unless you're in that world, if we're making your life a little easier when you're dealing with circuses, carnivals, and things like that, then maybe the new structure is making life a little easier for you. Okay, so that's a change to look for. Now, the next one, the world of EVSE when it comes to GFCI protection. Now, I believe you're going to have, even though the CAMs and all came through and all this stuff, ultimately at the end of the day, what I think is going to happen is the CAMs failed, and it's going to go back to the code panel anyway. The code panel is going to vote their intentions, right? And their intention is that they want permanently installed EVSEs as well as cord and plug connected EVSEs to require GFCI protection. Now, here's the thing. When it's a receptacle, it's required, whether it's 150 volts or less to ground, that'd be your typical 120, 240 volt, or it goes to the over 150 volts to ground. Those would be more like the 208 ones or the more commercial applications rather than the residential application, okay? So that's the receptacles. That's going to require GFCI protection. Now, the difference is the type of GFCI protection for those receptacles. If a typical Class A GFCI for the plug and cord, okay? Tom says R525 doesn't exist to me. He's scared of inspecting carnivals. When I was at the city of Alexandria and I was the head and oversaw all the inspectors, we had to be certified by the state of Virginia in amusement parks, carnivals, and we had to go get a separate, what's called an amusement device license to inspect those. So we couldn't just follow the NEC. We had to go and get this special Virginia license because we had to look at everything, the safety latches. We had to walk around because, again, people were getting hurt at these. And some of these carnivals are just beat to death. I mean, some of these things I can't imagine. When I was younger, I got on them. Today, when I look at them, I'm like, you ain't getting me on that. You know, the scat, you remember those things? The scat that spin you around, make you throw up. Cobra spins around. I mean, we'd have to inspect the pins and all this. And that my electrical inspectors had to learn to do this type of stuff. And, that's why I realized I don't go to carnivals and I would never get on that crap again. But you do you, people. You like to get. I ain't getting on those carnivals that come to your fairgrounds. I ain't getting them. I ain't getting on them things for nothing after what I know about them. That's just not worth it for me. I'm not putting my kid on it. Now, I might put my kid today on it, but I'm not. I wouldn't put him when he was younger. I wouldn't do it. Anyway, where did I go? Y'all got me. I got digressed. Okay, so EVSE. So what we're looking at, what it looks like right now, what we're going to have right now, cord and plug are going to have to be GFCI protected. If it's 150 volts or less to ground, it's just a Class A GFCI. If it is over 150 volts to ground, again, cord and plug, then it's going to have to be an SP GFCI, okay? Special purpose. And those are typically going to go up to like 20 milliamps, okay? They're still reporting. Obviously, there's many manufacturers like ChargePoint, for example, say, don't put ours on a cord and plug GFCI. Hardwire it. Because currently in the code, there's no GFCI requirement for it to be hardwired. Okay, now, the only exception to that is what? If you put the EVSE outside and then it constitutes it being an outlet, and then you go back to 210.8F, and that would require the GFCI protection. Make sense? If it was a receptacle, it requires GFCI protection either way. Garage or outside, doesn't matter. So, significant change. Now, for the 2026, they are going to introduce the requirement for permanently wired EVSE anywhere. Now, the question people were raising at the CAM, and the manufacturers are the one that raised this, they were like, no, please remove the permanent part because we can't meet it. Our system will not work. And the people at the meeting just totally rejected it. And the code panel had originally rejected it. So that's why they put the CAM. They wanted to get and say, we need more time. This is not going to work. We got to fix things. Wait, and so anyway, what's going to happen, I believe, is that you're going to have GFCI, either a standard GFCI or an SP GFCI. It just has a higher milliamp threshold. It can handle higher inrush and frequency. I believe that those are going to be required. And I believe that the manufacturers are going to have to scramble because the CCID that's built into a lot of these EVSEs, the protection system, as well as any GFP that's built into them, are not going to meet the requirement, in my opinion, of an SP GFCI or a standard GFCI. And so most of these are going to be installed in dwellings. The vast majority of these, I think the problem is that if they require the GFCI, they're not going to function properly. And people are going to be circumventing this. And I think that local jurisdictions are going to be writing amendments to still get around this because the EVSEs are not going to work. Now, there are exceptions for this for DC fast charging, which doesn't have to have the GFCI. There's also an exception for this if it is bidirectional, which again, there's a company called Emporia, and there's other ones that actually can use the EVSE to send power back in. So it's bidirectional. Well, obviously those don't have to have the GFCI protections on those. That's an exception to the rule. So moving forward in the 2026, GFCI protection, regardless, it just may be a GFCI versus an SP GFCI. Again, milliamp threshold differences, frequency differences, are going to be required. The one that you're going to install in your house, it's a standard. If it's a receptacle, the built into the EVSE is not going to cover anything. It's not going to cover it. Okay. So the question is whether or not the built-in stuff for the permanent wiring will cover this rule in the 2026. And I think it totally depends on the type of GFCI that the manufacturers build into their EVSEs. The way they have it now, I do not think they would comply. The CCID, the GFP that they put in there, protection, I don't think it meets the thresholds of the intent of the submission. So they were going to have to scramble. And that's why they were at the CAM arguing it, because they can't meet it. They know they can't meet it. Tesla was there. ChargePoint was there. They said they can't meet it. So that tells me that the stuff that they build into their EVSE can't meet the intent of what this code rule requires. So again, got to scramble, but they've got a year to come up with it, that type of thing. All right, so hardwire it right now. Don't have to worry about GFCI. I say, what's the next one? Okay, surge protection. So there was a big discussion about surge protection, and so we'll go look at that real quick, and that is 215.18 for the feeder one, and obviously there was 230.67, that type of thing. So we'll go look at this real quick and see what the change was. All right, so let me go back here. Let me take you back, and let's just go to the one in because this is where I think it's going to be for the feeder application. I think there's big confusion there when it comes to this, or it could create more confusion, but I'm not going to go there. We'll just talk about what's going to happen. So let's go look at the feeder one and see the change. So I'm going to clip it. Okay, right here. Okay, so the one proposal that came during the NITMANS was to add right here, which says dwelling units, to add as it applies to multifamily dwellings, because I think that we already have a requirement in 230.67 to put it at a service, and it is an allowance to put it downstream at a feeder panel. Again, we already have that allowance. It still requires it to service. So the reason they tried to get this one changed was to add extra language here so that it only applied to the multifamily dwelling. But then people argued and said, well, that's not going to work because that means that you may not have SPD at the actual dwelling unit. If the panel is remote, let's say a service is on a pole 30 feet away from the house because that's what the owners want, and now a feeder's coming, that they don't have the SPD at the actual dwelling unit. And by adding that language in here is going to cause confusion. And my point to that was you already have it at the service, even though it's maybe remote, the damn homeowner needs to know where to go to check it. Also, there is an allowance in there to put it on the feeder. So that's really a design decision between the installer and the owners. That was my opinion. But anyway, the code panel, the group all disagreed, as well as the code panel disagreed, and this is probably what's going to go in right here, okay? Now, one of the changes is down here in the location right here. It says the SPD shall be installed in or adjacent to distribution equipment connected to the load side of the feeder. Okay, so that's in the feeder panel. That contains branch circuits, overcurrent protected devices that supply the location specified in 215.18a, okay? So that's the type of thing. And of course, this was heavily debated during the event. But at the end of the day, no, it went back to the way the code was here. Now let's go back and look at the other one and see what happened there. So that was 230, what I think is the main one, by the way, regardless of whether you put it at the service or you put it at a remote panel, because you have an exception for that. But let's go back and look and see what it says in surge protection here. Okay, so this is the proposed language for the 2026 right here, okay? Surge protection. This is for the service, right? You see there was a public input on it, and here it says, all service supplying the following shall be provided with surge protected device. So it already requires surge protection at the dwelling. It already requires it. So I didn't understand the feeder argument. I thought it was better placed to make sure that at least in, for example, multifamily buildings, that we have surge protection, because there's a high probability that the tenants can't get to the service area, which is probably down in the locked room for the multifamily building. And because of the size down there, there's a high probability that there isn't any SPD protection down there at all, because this applies to dwelling units, not to the multifamily dwelling itself. So again, this could be confusing, right? Now, here is the location requirement. So this SPD, the SPD shall be an integral part of the service equipment or shall be located immediately adjacent to. Immediately adjacent, folks, means right beside it. Okay. People say, well, I want a distance on that. Well, immediately adjacent is right there. Right there. Okay. And a lot of people say, well, within arm's width. Okay. Whatever. Now it says, here's the exception. The exception says if the service supplies only feeders, okay, so if the service supplies only feeders, the SPD shall not be required to be located at the service, okay? So it says if look at the service if an SPD is located at the load side of each feeder, okay? So this is an allowance to say, look, it doesn't have to be at the service if it can be at each feeder, okay? So and again, each feeder. If you only have one feeder, it is what it is. Okay. So I believe we had allowances there. Okay. So at the end of the day, it is what it is. Okay. So anyway, there you go. I don't believe they're going to get any change for that. I think it's going to be just like the verbiage that's there, and there's not going to be any significant change. AFCI requirement, you heard me earlier, significant change. They did vote at the NITMAM or the CAM was to add attics. So any outlet or device that's located in an attic will get AFCI protection, but I believe that that's going to be reversed. I believe it will, but I'm just making you aware of it. Bathroom lighting outlets, that got voted on at the CAM, but I believe that if it goes back to the code panel, I believe, don't hold me to it, but I believe that'll be reversed. Okay, so I just wanted to mention it so that you're aware of it. Okay, that's it. Let's see here. Okay, energy management systems. Energy management systems kind of give you an idea of the structure and an idea of what things are going to look like. So energy management systems, which are obviously very important now because we have so many systems in a building and some allowances for generators and EV systems that are part of an energy management system and all that. That got moved from 750, and now that's going to be over on, bear with me, right here. Energy management. So 750 gets moved right here. And here you get all the listing requirements, alternate power sources, again, all the information if you're somebody that's in the world of energy management systems, okay? Garage AFCI, I'm not aware of anything that was submitted for the Garage AFCI. Let's go look at the 2020 for that, David. Since we're right here, we might as well go look and see. So let's go see what made it. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's go look and see for dwelling units. Okay, let's see what we got. Okay, maybe. Let's look. Okay, so here's what's submitted. Here's what's on the code, and it wasn't added during the NITMAMs. So let's see, garage. So kitchens, family rooms, dining, parlor, blah, 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 blah. Recreation or close the halls and similar locations. I don't see anything in here about AFCIs being added to garages. I don't believe I see anything. No, I don't see it. Okay, so nothing in there about that was added. Okay, and you notice that it doesn't say anything here about attics or the bathroom lighting outlets. That was submitted during the CAM, and this is what the code panel intended. So I think when it goes back to the code panel, they're going to say, no, there wasn't enough. That's why we voted in the first place, not to expand the AFCI, which is a rarity. Okay, that means that the code panel didn't get swayed by the manufacturers, folks. Did that surprise you? Well, they didn't get swayed, and that code panel says, no, we're not going to expand it for attics, and we're not going to expand it for bathroom lighting outlets, that type of thing. So when this goes back to the code panel, I think they're going to vote that way. Now, could somebody have been swayed? Maybe, but it's highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. Does that make sense? Let's see here. Where are we at? Let's see here. One of the things I'm going to tell you, here's one that I did not pay attention to, and I'm just bringing this up because it might have changed, but I will say this is an example where we'll go with what the second draft said, because if it does change at the NITMAM, it's probably going to go back to whatever the code panel wants. And I think this one is probably significant, right? And this is in the EV world, okay? And so, oops, sorry about that. Let's go here. Nope, we don't want to go there. We want to go here. This is an EV. This is, to me, this might be significant. So let's go look here and see 625 for you folks, because EV's all popular now. All right, so let's see here. Let's get down here to right here. Okay. What's up, Bill? Got another CMECP in the house, David. Bill Butts is in the house. All right, so 625. Bill, make sure you read that article I sent you. We need a vote back. Thumbs up, thumbs down. We got a CMECP candidate waiting for an answer. All right, so 625.4, qualified person. This is interesting. And I do not know the outcome, but if it reverts back to the code panel, this is what they wanted. So there's a high probability they're going to keep this. Here's what it says. Permanently installed electric vehicle power transfer systems equipment shall be installed by qualified persons. Okay? So under 625, what is that? And if you want to read, so we see here, if I click on, let's see here, if you hide the legislation, it just gives you all of this, right? But if we go to the SR, right, it says, here was the panel statement. It says the requirement was added to ensure that only qualified persons install permanently installed EVSEs. Well, that's important because this language right here will totally throw people. That's not exactly what it says, but you have to read between the lines, and that's a problem that a lot of people have with the NEC. Why didn't you say permanently installed electric vehicle EVSE? Why didn't you say EVSEs shall be installed by qualified persons rather than the way the verbiage is? Okay. Well, that also has to do with covering a broader topic. So it's not just EVSEs that are one direction to charge a vehicle. It also would apply to bidirectional EVSEs and things like that for these electric vehicle applications, right? So in this scenario right here, and this is huge because a lot of people buy their own charger from Emporia, and they get a Tesla, and Tesla will sell you a charger. And I know they want to professionally install it as far as their network, but this is going to impact and say that, you know what, no more DIYers. Okay. Again, we get back into the argument of what's a qualified person. Well, to me, a handyman is not a qualified person. A licensed electrician, because this is a technical document, it's not for the untrained, it's for electricians. So, you know, a qualified person. Now, what it's going to get around is people like David in jurisdictions, homeowners are allowed to pull their own permits. And if a homeowner is allowed to pull their own permits, then they're allowed to wire their own house. Well, if they're allowed to wire their own house, then they sure as hell are probably going to wire their own EVSE. So I don't know how this happened or what this might have done. So I'm interested to see the outcome. I don't know, but here I'm just to tell you what's in the public within the second draft. Okay. And it did get submitted to the CAM. I don't know the outcome, but either way, if this is what the code panel intended, this is probably what they'll vote for. But I don't know how we enforce this because a homeowner is allowed to wire their own house. So maybe the homeowner can do it, but you can't just hire a DIYer to do it unless they're a qualified person. And again, I don't know. These are hard ones to be able to wrap your head around, like the one with the pool inspection. That one in 680 is hard too, because you're allowing somebody years later to come onto your property from the jurisdiction to do an inspection of your pool to make sure the equitential bonding is right and everything. How do you enforce that? To me, I don't know. The only way that I know that you can enforce this one is if the jurisdictions will not issue a homeowner permit to install an EVSE. I think that's the only way you would enforce this, that type of scenario. Is what it is. Okay, so that's what you got. Let's see here. Let's see here. It looks like there was something that was submitted. A motion was at the technical committee. This is interesting. I believe there was a motion to remove the word, the qualified persons clause, okay, in order to really try to remove the DIYer stuff, right? And I believe that it was rejected. That's what I'm seeing on my notes, that it was rejected and that would have gotten rid of the DIYer from being able to do a lot of things because of the term qualified person. They wanted to get that removed, but that was rejecting that type scenario. Okay, so there was in a technical meeting, a motion to remove the qualified person clause was actually rejected. So they're leaving the qualified person in there. So the effort here is to try to stop the DIY stuff. But, especially for this EVSE issue, I just don't see how you do it. I just don't. How do you determine who's qualified? I guess that you're going to have to, the HJs are going to have to require more information to be able to do this. Seems like that could be a bit of a freaking challenge. Okay. So I don't know. That's it, folks. Let's go on and do some spins and wins. I will do more of these and talk about them. If you hear some out in the grapevine, and bring them to future episodes. Let me get a piece of paper, folks, because I'm running out of paper. If you hear any changes in the grapevine, I will tell you that I'm waiting to do a lot of my change stuff for 2026. I did these because I kind of knew the outcome of these. But at the end of the day, I'll do more of them as they change. And again, some of you may say this isn't relevant to you because you're not going to be on the 2026 forever. I get it. But we need to see into the mind of what they're trying to do to resolve certain issues, like the tripping of the GFCI stuff. Oh, let me tell you about that one. Okay, so let me tell you what happened. Let's real quick. Let me show you what happened or what's going to happen. So here is, let me get rid of this. So remember that laundry list, okay? Yeah, so Sparky, the 3VA will be 2VA for the whole dwelling calculation, right? But when it comes to the branch circuits, how many you got to have, how many general use branch circuit electrician has to at least install, that went to 4 VA per square foot based on the CAM. But when it comes back to the code panel, it's probably going to drop back to the 3 VA per square foot. So that's what they're going to use to determine the minimum number of branch circuits. Plus, you also have to include the minimum of 2 small appliance, that type of thing, as well as the laundry. That's also minimum circuit requirements as well. But you get my point. So let's look real quick. I want to show you this. Because this is an ongoing thing when it comes to these GFCIs, and I talked about it. Let me show you what Code Panel 2 did when it came to these GFCI requirements for like ranges, cooktops, and whatnot. Okay, so this is interesting. So here you see what they did right here. They referred it to 422.5, right? Which is Code Panel 17. Code panels, so they want to get rid of all of these, because they think that Code Panel 17 is going to put them in a list there, right? So they're going to have a list, right? So they said, look, let's just get rid of it and defer people to 422.5 like they used to do cycles ago, right? Okay, well, that's what kept. So from my understanding, this is going to go back to the code making panel. The code making panel 2 is going to either stick with this line here, or they've been directed to reevaluate it. Because what happened was that Code Panel 17, which I'm on, let me show you what we did. Okay, so you can see. So this was Code Panel 2 wanted to get rid of all these things, and you're thinking, why would they do that? They have majority of these people that sit on this is the manufacturer of GFCIs, because the code panels are different panels, and they assume that we would accept it over in 422.5, right? Well, guess what? We didn't. Let me show you what we did. All right, so let's go down here to 422. And again, you're thinking, why can't you all work together? It's hard to do that, guys, when you have too many panels, so many meetings, and they don't coordinate. You've got your own work that you're busy with. If it was that smooth, it would be great, but it's never that smooth. All right, so here's what we did. So this is what Code Panel 17 did. See, here's the appliances, right? Notice what the list is? It doesn't have those other things on it. However, we added a C, and a C allows for these high-frequency HF GFCI protection that the manufacturers say that they have, okay? But it's not going to come effective till January 1st, 2029. So we're going to give them time. But it only applies to HVAC appliances, which is going to be a conflict, really, on what we did back in 210.8F, really, right? because we were okay with the January 1st, 2029. They were not. They wanted to stop at September 1st, 2026, right? So we're saying that for refrigerators and HVACs that you have to use a GFCI that's marked high frequency, because that's where their issue is. For certain refrigerators, I think probably more like those daggone Sub-Zeros and crap like that, because I have a GFCI on my refrigerator and it hasn't tripped, knock on wood. I've been in this house for 9 or 10 months. It just doesn't happen. But some of the new Energy Star high efficient refrigerators probably put out a frequency that can mess with these GFCIs, things like that. So they can have one of those that have marked high frequency. And from my understanding, the GFCI manufacturer says, no problem, we got you. But it's not going to be required until January 1st, 2029. So, but you notice something. We didn't do it for ranges. We didn't do it for cooktops. We didn't do it for microwave ovens, right? We didn't do it for any of that type of stuff because we have big concerns about it. So effectively what would have happened is if you accept this, then 210.8D goes away, and the requirement for all those ranges, cooktop, ovens, microwave, all that goes away, because we on Code Panel 17, we had people come to the meeting, and they came to the meeting, and they represent UL 943's activity. They're in this group, and they said, we're not ready yet. It's coming. It may be here, but we can't tell you when that document's going to be published with a new standard that manufacturers have to follow. And then, of course, it takes time for the manufacturers to follow that and make them. So it's better to say, look, we're not going to put a requirement in for something which people are reporting compatibility issues, problems with them not holding. We're not going to put it in there because what it's going to do is encourage people to say, screw this crap. I'm getting rid of the GFCI in the first place and circumvent the rule. And we don't want that to happen either. So this one's got to hash out. I don't know. If I were to go by my thing that I told you where the code panel's actions follow, whatever happened at the Knitman, if I go by that, here's what's going to happen. It's going to go back to code panel 2. Now that code panel 2 was there, they might look at it and go, wait a minute. I thought that code panel 17 was going to include these damn things in there. That's the only reason we got rid of them, because they were going to do it. Wait a minute. They didn't do that. We're putting it back in there. And so now they get added back to 210.8D, and then we get this and look at it and go, well, wait a minute. We think we did the right thing. We're going to leave them out. And now we're back to square one. They're in 210.8D, but they're not over here in 422.5. Remember, 422 is specific about the appliance. 210.8 is about the branch circuit. So again, it causes confusion. So that's why we were trying to fix this. But we did not believe that they are ready yet to do that. So now what we could have done, this just to save face. I'm just going to say this. We could have done this, folks. You know what we could have done? We could have done this. We could have left them all in here. We could have left all the list in here with the ranges, ovens, or whatever. And we could have put a date down here just like this, a come effective January 1, 2029. That way, if there was actual data that supported that the need for GFCIs on these appliances that are not listed here now, then we would have given them to 2029. We could have done that, but we didn't. So Code Panel 17 sent a message. It ain't ready to have them on ovens, ranges, cooktops, and microwaves. It ain't ready yet. Okay? But whatever Code Panel 2 does, we're going to have to coordinate this. And now that it's down to just us two looking at it, we'll probably have the chairs of both committees working together. I don't know where this is going to go. Oh, by the way, somebody also asked me, well, you said microwaves. What about the microwave that's in a kitchen and is a receptacle? Doesn't that have to be GFCI protected? Yes, if it's a receptacle. 422 in that list was talking about specific to the appliance. So that could have encompasses hardwired or cord and plug. So again, still got the rules in 210.8A. If it's a receptacle in a kitchen, then it's going to have to be GFCI protected. So we have some other different things that overlap, but this was specific. So we want to make sure that we get this right. So hopefully we get this all sorted out. I just wanted to point that out to you. Okay. All right. All right. Now that's just I'm kind of open the door and just letting you see what's going on. It might be confusing for some of you how I've discussed it, but all we're doing is this is a weekly show. We're just dipping our toe in it. We're talking about these things. It will be very fluid. I will keep you updated on these changes, that type of thing. Okay. Let's see, Van Man, what did you sent a question? I don't know. I'm busy talking, brother. I don't look at all these questions here. Questions. I read about the HVAC and I learned that you calculate 2,400 volts per ton. Is that correct, sir? I asked because you were talking about HVAC. I can't answer that question. I don't know anything about that. HVAC units, you're going to go by the nameplate. So that's probably just a rule of thumb that people use. I don't think that's anywhere in the NEC. I think you're just going to install HVAC based on the nameplate. A maximum overcurrent protection, minimum circuit ampacity. Okay, you're going to follow 440, which is going to direct you to the nameplate. So I don't know anything about the 2,400 VA per ton. That's an HVAC guy question. That's not founded in the NEC. Okay, that type of thing that I'm aware of. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. All right, folks, let's do some drawings real quick. Spin the wheel, give away some goodies. Let's see here. Let's go. Guys give me credit for being smart. I'm not that smart. That might be a conversion or something. I don't know, but I'm not aware of it. Let's see here. All right, so Cray, you're in a drawing for a knife. And ask whoever got the knife, okay? Ask whoever got the knife, they like it. I think they're cool as hell. And I can tell you they're sharp. I can promise you that it's sharp. So that's not in doubt whether or not it's sharp or not, you know? That's why they probably say keep Paul away from the job site with a knife because he cuts himself. All right, let's go. Question. Carlos says, I already have the Fast Tracks 2. What program should I buy? There's only two options, 2020, but I'm not sure if the only difference between them both is the Fast Tracks 2. Let me correct your statement, Carlos, real quick. What? Bill, look what you got. You got a wire waffle. I don't know that you need a wire waffle, Bill. You don't really do installations, but if you want a wire waffle, you want to play with it, let me know. I'll send you a wire waffle. Let me know, Bill, what do you want me to spin again? Give you something else. Let's see here. So where are we at? Okay, so Carlos, Fast Tracks Tube is not a exam prep program. That's just videos. So if you already have the Fast Tracks Tube, then you shouldn't get the enhanced programs because all that does is include Fast Tracks Tube. That's the only difference between the basic and enhanced programs, whether it's 2020 or 2023. If you already have access to Fast Tracks Tube, then just get the basic program because it's exactly the same course as the enhanced. There is no difference. The only difference is the enhanced includes an additional 12 months of Fast Tracks Tube. The courses don't expire, but the enhanced is giving you the video lessons over on Fast Tracks Tube and all these different assortments of videos. So that's the only difference. So you have to determine what code cycle you're testing on, the 2020 or 2023. We do not do the 2017 anymore. We've sunset that. We've retired it, even though a couple states still use it. I get it, but we've moved forward. We're not going to do that. Battle says it can be a matter of the sear. Again, that's another thing that I know squat about. I'm an electrician. When I'm called to wire that stuff up, I just look at the nameplate. Know what I'm saying? Okay, let's spin again. Bill says let's spin this thing again. He doesn't need a wire waffle. See what we can get for you, Bill. Yeah, but for everybody that are, and also if you're already licensed, then you shouldn't get the basic and the enhanced at all. If you already have a license, then you're just an expert in your pocket. Then you should get what's called Mastering the NEC. That's a course we have. It's basically the course material. You don't have all the other stuff involved with exam prep. It's just the course. That's why it's cheaper. It's the same course material. It's just designed for you to have it in your pocket so you can use it at any time. And it also has the built-in Fast Tracks Interact so that you can ask code questions and ask stuff inside of the program. All right, Bill, you're in the drawing for the NFC cards. Now, NFC cards, you can be reprogrammed. Whatever you want, you just simply tap somebody's NFC-enabled phone. Most all modern phones have it, and you can reprogram it for your web address or whatever you want, or you can help promote us, because if you get one, it'll already have our stuff programmed in it. And you just tap your phone wherever your NFC chip is on their phone, and it will load our link tree with all the stuff that gets to us. David's got one. I think I sent David one. So that's what you're in the drawing for. And it's a limited. We don't do very many of these. Again, to help promote Coffee Hour and Fast Tracks Tube and Fast Tracks System and all that kind of good stuff. All right, let's spin again. And they are limited cards. So, yeah, I am one guy that tell you I know squat about HVAC. I wish I had learned a little bit more. I know how to change things like capacitors and that type of thing. But if I had to do something like change a compressor or whatever, I would not. I don't even know how to charge a unit. My brother does. He knows how to do all that stuff. He's a jack of all, buddy. But me, no, I don't. I'll change a capacitor, things like that. I won't even get into messing with the circuit board for an HVAC unit outside or even indoor. I don't mess with it. I hardly clean my HVAC unit. But I will run the power to it, and I just follow the nameplate. You know what I'm saying? That type of thing. So there we go. Let's see here. Oh yeah, another student passed it. Yeah, we did have students. People send me emails and texts and all the time about successfully passing the program. Oh, the name seemed to have spun around, so we're gonna have to do the name again because it's spinning around. This is for a voltage drop card. No, Paul. You all won by being here, my friend. Come on. Come on, brah. Oh, Melting Toast, Rob. So, Melting Toast, you're in the drawing for a VD card. Okay. And we're in the process of creating a whole bunch of other cards, and we'll announce those later. But we have other options. Adam says, will I be doing a video on the code changes later on in the year? Yeah, we'll probably have a lot of them here on Coffee Hour, but we'll probably be doing some random code change stuff as well, kind of talking about the different changes. Once everything is set in stone, even though the second draft is pretty set in stone, except for the cams, and I think they'll be reversed back to whatever the code panel wanted anyway, with some exceptions. So again, but I don't like to start officially doing those things until the final votes are out and everything's done and we know that it's going to go to print. Now, a lot of people start now so they can have it out right away. Since I don't print anything, I don't actually create a book for code changes. I don't have to be in the studio producing that ahead of time, okay? But we will have some videos over on Fast Tracks Tube doing the code change stuff. So that's probably where you're going to see them. So the other question is, am I going to have any videos that are on YouTube that are free about the code changes? The answer to that is probably no. It's probably going to be for those that are subscribed over on Fast Tracks Tube, because that would make more sense. That'd be taking care of the people that subscribe to our platform and our students that get the enhanced program. That would be probably why we would do that. Okay. All right. So Milton, you're in the drawing for that. Let's spin again. And I'm boring people. I'm dropping down viewership here at the end because I've gone over an hour. Sorry about that. David A. All right, David, speak of the devil, Fast Tracks Tube. You get an annual subscription. All you got to do is go over to fasttrackstube.com. And up at the top, you'll see member plans. Click on it. And sign up for a free membership, and then email us your username and your email address, and we will elevate you to an annual membership. Okay, it'll start out with being a free membership where you won't get to see anything, but you'll know it because when you can actually see videos, you will actually know that we upgraded you. Okay, so that time. So again, just send us that information so that we can make sure that we get you updated. But that's the Fast Tracks Tube subscription. There you go. All right, last we're going to do two more and we're going to let you out of here. Also, I should mention, we've got the newer minimalist wallets available with the coach on, okay, with the Fast Tracks family on it. If you want to be in the family, they're very limited. You don't get to pick the color, but you will put your name on here, that type of thing. And we'll put what else you want on there. If you want your license number on there, if you want when you actually passed your exam on there, whatever you want. You want us to put your name and then underneath it in small letters, master electrician or whatever you want. Just let us know in the comments when you order one. Okay. All right. Marlon, you have in the drawing for the 2023 enhanced. Okay. So Marlon Lewis, you might already have won something like this, but you're in the 2023 enhanced drawing. All right. All right. One more. Let's spin again. Let's go. All right. Last one. Hopefully folks will get lucky here. Some new names I'm seeing here. Petey. Is it Grazoe? And either way, you are in the drawing for an Ohms wheel coin. Okay, so they're very similar like this. This happens to be a CMECP coin that's only available to CMECPs, right? There's your coin. So in the future, if we ever plan an event, CMECPs have to have this coin to get in to that event. So anyway, and we are planning something in the future, but right now we're still in the development. And I told y'all I hired somebody to be focused on that. So at the end of the day, we'll see where that goes. Okay, Ohms wheel coin. So you're in the drawing, PD for the Ohms wheel coin. All right. All right, folks. Ooh, don't want to move the mic. Thank you all. Let's see here. Marlon, even though I have my master's, will I need the enhanced course? Well, you just don't need to use the example. I told you the enhanced is really just like the mastering the NEC, which is a post-licensing course. So it's the same. You just ignore the exam prep. But if you end up winning that, then I'll let you have the master's if you want. It doesn't matter. You know, when you win that course, we'll talk about options for you if that's what you want, that type of thing. What's up, Robert? Thank you. I'm glad you stumbled here too. All right, so that was a 30,000 foot view of some changes. Again, I'll bring you other changes as we go forward to kind of give you a spattering of what's going on. And we'll get back to some lessons, that type of thing, and exam prep this week. We'll get back into doing some exam prep dissection questions as well, that type of thing. All right? All right, folks, I appreciate you all. Have a great Tuesday. We'll catch you tomorrow, which is hump day. We'll catch you here in coffee hours. Share it with your friends. Share it with people at work. Let everybody know this is the only show that's for electricians that we can communicate and get our day started. Till next time, stay safe. God bless.